32 people in Clare were before local courts on burglary charges in the first 9 months of last year. That's according to data being highlighted by the Ireland South Fianna Fáil MEP and former barrister Cynthia Ní Mhurchú. She's been analysing new figures from the Irish Court Service which show that a relatively small number of repeat offenders are responsible for a disproportionate number of burglaries across the country. The data highlights burglary hotspots, rising concerns for rural communities during the dark winter months, and raises questions around temporary prison release and community safety funding. Cynthia, good morning to you. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning, and Adeline Fuiwasha to all your listeners.
Cynthia, can you take us through some of the headline figures and what, from your viewpoint, they tell us about the scale of the problem, both here in our region and nationally?
Yes, what they tell us in terms of the scale of the problem, that this is a problem that is persisting. It's a problem that's been around for as long as we can remember. I didn't do a comparative study between the 9 months of 2025 and other years or other 9-month periods prior to that. So I can't say with any certainty that the problem is increasing or that it's getting worse. But what I do know is that the problem will persist because we have a number of repeat offenders that know they can simply get away with it. They're prepared to take the chance, and they're prepared to rob and violate and invade somebody's home, and not only do it once, but sometimes do it repeatedly. So what the figures showed to me for that 9-month period was that the repeat offenders are buried in the number of burglary cases nationwide in the district courts for the first 9 months of 2025 was over 1,700 burglary cases came before the district court, but the individuals involved in that, or the perpetrators involved in that, was 1,187, which shows the difference there and indicates the repeat offender. And a similar pattern was seen at circuit court level, because during the same said period, 9 months in 2025, there were 729 burglary cases tried in the circuit courts in Ireland, but they only referenced or were referable to 529 offenders. So it's the repeat offenders really that I am highlighting by doing this piece with you, and I'm really calling on Minister Jim O'Callaghan to prioritise reduction of temporary release for the repeat offenders of burglary, because this crime is way too seriously, and it's particularly affecting very negatively the growing ageing population in our country, as we see right throughout Europe as well. So we know from ESRI data that between 2013 and 2023, we saw an increase of 40% in the population over 65. But that is projected to double to 1.6 million by the year 2051. So our life expectancy obviously is good, our health system is good, and people are living longer and they're taking greater care with themselves and with their care and comfort and their health and so forth. And of course, older people, as we know, are targets for these kind of repeat offenders involved in burglary.
And I just wonder, Cynthia, how much of an issue that might be for us here in Clare, a largely rural county. As I mentioned in the introduction, 32 people appearing before the courts on burglary charges here in just 9 months in 2025. And with it being a largely rural county, and if you think of older people living alone in rural Ireland, how much of a concern is that?
Yeah, no, it's always a concern. We're not the worst in Europe. Ireland is not the worst in Europe. I mean, there are many other countries ahead of us, up to 10 countries and more ahead of us. But if we just look at Ennis, and if we look at the district court system and the district court figures for burglary in Ennis for the first 9 months of 2025, my data show that there was 24 people or 24 instances of burglary before the Ennis district court, and then before the Ennis circuit court there were 8. And when you add 24 and 8, you get to 32 cases in total. Now, can I tell you that out of the total of 32 different court jurisdictions that I got figures for, Ennis was in place number 13. So you're ranking quite high there. It is a problem, and it is something that I want your listeners to be aware of and to take steps that they can take, as opposed to us constantly asking government to do this, that and the other. And in fairness to Minister Jim O'Callaghan, he is doing quite a lot. But I do want your listeners to know today from listening to me that there is a community safety fund fully funded by the government that is available to community projects and community supports to protect communities against burglary. including, for example, community CCTV. And I also want your listeners to know that there is a personal alarm available, whether it's worn on the wrist or worn around the neck like a necklace. There's a personal alarm available through the Seniors Alert Scheme for our older population, 65 plus, who are living alone. And that is administered by Pobble. It's available free of charge, as in the device is free of charge. And then the monitoring system that is with the device, whereby there is a communication made if the button is pressed, if the device is deployed, is used, is pressed. There is a service, an alarm service that is free of charge for a year after the device is given.
And in terms, Cynthia, of what people can do to tackle the number of burglaries that are occurring, I'm minded of the advice that we receive quite regularly here in our Garda Focus slot from local Gardaí. I'm thinking particularly of social media. They always advise people to not post holiday photos, which I suppose people they're so excited, they lose the run of themselves being away, but that plays a significant role in modern burglary trends.
Absolutely, Alan. None of us are anonymous now anymore, especially those who are engaged in social media, which is probably everybody or practically everybody now. So yeah, it does take away from the enjoyment of the holiday. We all love posting, hi, we're at arrivals, or hi, we're at departures. But these criminals, especially the repeat criminals carrying out these repeated crimes and repeated burglaries, they're only too aware of this. They're constantly watching online, watching in reality. They're also scanning the death notices. They're very much linked, a lot of them, to their local area. And they are constantly doing their research. So yes, be very, very careful about uploading. Be careful about exiting the house with your full household in the case of a bereavement. Make sure that you have a friend, another relative or somebody else who's going to look after the house. And make sure that you use your lights on your low energy bulbs. Make sure that you put on your lights. Make sure that you lock up. And could I just say to older people who in the main like to keep a bit of cash in the house, and some of them unfortunately keep far too much cash in the house, please rethink that. Please get rid of the cash. What is the most amount that you might need to get an emergency taxi to the hospital? It's possibly up to €100 or maybe up to €50 depending on where you live. Please only keep that amount in the biscuit tin or under your pillow or under your bed, in the shoebox or wherever. It's far better not to be attracting in these repeated burglars who are just looking for the quick cash box, and they know that older people might have that.
Yeah, good advice. But of course, people can do as much as they can to try and prevent burglaries from occurring. But they will also expect the justice system to play the significant part in this. And 729 burglary cases tried over the first 9 months of last year in the Circuit Court, committed by far less offenders, 529. You've mentioned Minister O'Callaghan there already, Cynthia. You want him to bring forward a robust plan to deal with repeat burglars. So what would such a plan look like?
Well, the plan looks like the following. I've written to him, what I want him to do is prioritise this, in the sense that temporary release is often afforded to people who are found guilty of burglary for the first time, or indeed repeat offenders, because there aren't enough prison places, or the bail conditions can be looked at. Bail has to be granted because, again, there is no space for them in the prison. So what I'd like him to do is prioritise this heinous crime of burglary, which is very violating on a personal level for a person who is affected by it, especially if the person encounters a burglar, which is even worse, and could be threatened by the burglar. But what I'd like him to do is prioritise it and to make sure to be clear that temporary release should never be the automatic go-to for the system, whether it's the judge in question or whether it's the prison authorities, because perhaps they can regulate their numbers and they can re-look at their numbers to ensure that there is a change in terms of a temporary release being afforded to different offenders, not always the same offenders who are those repeat offenders guilty of burglary.
OK, we do have to leave it there, but the Fianna Fáil Ireland South MEP, Cynthia Ní Mhurchú, thank you for joining us on Morning Focus to speak about this issue.
Alan.